Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something that, well, it can feel incredibly daunting, can't it? Buying a property in the UK. We want to try and simplify all that stress and paperwork.
Yeah, cut through the noise a bit.
Exactly. We'll break down the standard stages, look at the really important legal bits, the contracts, and also flag some key rules, the regulations, that you as a buyer absolutely need to know.
That's the mission. Think of it as um, extracting the essential knowledge, from working out your budget right at the start all the way through to getting those keys at completion. We want you to feel well-informed, not overwhelmed, and we're focusing purely on the buyer's view in a standard sale today.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the basic journey, the roadmap. Before we dive deep into contracts and things, what are the typical steps? Say the main stages for buying property by private treaty in England, Wales, or Northern Ireland.
Right.
Because, as you always rightly point out, Scotland's system is quite different.
Fundamentally different, yes. So, sticking to the standard process elsewhere, you generally go through about 7 key stages, sequentially.
Okay, walk us through them. What's the usual order?
Right. First, and this is vital, you establish your budget, know your limits up front.
Sensible.
Second, find the property, the fun bit maybe.
Hopefully.
Third, you make an offer. Fourth, things get serious. The formal mortgage application.
Okay.
Fifth, fingers crossed, you receive the official mortgage offer. Sixth, this is the big one legally, the exchange of contracts.
That's the point of no return, sorta?
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah.
That's the legal commitment point. And then finally, stage 7, completion. That's when ownership actually transfers, you get the keys.
That structure makes sense. But you mentioned stage 6, exchange of contracts being the legal tipping point. Where does the real sort of non-negotiable commitment kick in? Because lots of people think making an offer ties them in, but that's not really the case here, is it?
No, that's a really crucial distinction to grasp. In the UK system, outside Scotland, while, all the early stages take effort, finding the place, making the offer, getting the mortgage process going, everything before stage 6, that exchange of contracts, is generally reversible.
Reversible how?
Well, you might lose some money you've already spent, perhaps on a survey or some initial legal searches, but you're not actually legally bound to buy the property, and the seller isn't bound to sell it to you until you physically exchange those signed contracts.
Right.
So stage 6, the exchange, and stage 7, completion, those are the moments with the real legal teeth.
Okay, that flows perfectly into the legal side of things then. Let's get into the foundations, the obligations that actually make this whole thing work. For a property contract, or any contract really, to be legally binding, what needs to be in place? What are the sort of essential ingredients?
It basically boils down to 4 key elements. First, you need agreement. So a clear offer from one side and acceptance from the other.
Makes sense. Offer acceptance.
Second, consideration. Something of value has to be exchanged. In this case, it's your money for their property.
Right, the quid pro quo.
Exactly. Third is capacity. All the parties involved must be legally able to make a contract. So generally 18 or over in England, Wales, Northern Ireland, 16 in Scotland. And crucially, they must be of sound mind.
Let's just pause on sound mind for a second.
All right.
Why is that element so critical here? Is it mainly about protecting vulnerable people?
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
It's there to ensure that anyone committing to such a significant transaction, potentially the biggest financial decision of their life, fully understands the implications, the terms, what they're signing up for.
I see.
If someone lacks that mental capacity, the contract could potentially be voided later because they couldn't give truly informed consent. It protects against exploitation.
Okay, that makes sense. And the fourth principle.
The fourth is intention. Both the buyer and seller must genuinely intend to create a legally binding relationship. It can't be, say, a casual promise or just an agreement in principle without that intent.
So agreement, consideration, capacity, intention.
Get all those 4, and you have a situation where both parties are legally bound by the terms. If one side then fails to follow through, say the buyer pulls out after exchange without a valid reason, the other party can potentially sue for breach of contract, maybe claim compensation for losses.
Right. Now, thinking about protection, especially for the buyer, there's that old Latin phrase you hear sometimes. Caveat emptor. Let the buyer beware. Sounds quite harsh. Does that still hold true today? Is it entirely on the buyer to spot problems?
Well, yes and no. Caveat emptor still exists as a principle, meaning the seller doesn't generally have a duty to volunteer negative information about the property if you don't ask.
So they don't have to point out the leaky roof unless I ask, does the roof leak?
Broadly, yes. However, and this is a big however, they absolutely cannot mislead you. They can't actively lie or conceal things if asked directly. And modern practice has significantly shifted the balance with things like the TA6 form.
Ah, yes, the TA6. We hear that acronym thrown around. What exactly is the TA6 and why is it so important for a buyer?
Okay, so TA6 is the standard property information form. It's published by the Law Society, and the seller's solicitor usually gets the seller to fill it in. It's basically a detailed questionnaire covering all sorts of things about the property and its history.
Like what kind of things?
Oh, boundaries, any alterations done to the property, guarantees for things like windows or damp proofing, whether there are any disputes with neighbors, parking arrangements, planning permissions nearby, environmental matters. It's pretty comprehensive.
And the seller has to fill this in, honestly.
Yes, they have a legal duty to answer the questions truthfully and accurately to the best of their knowledge. If they don't know the answer to something, they should state that clearly rather than guess or, worse, deliberately mislead.
And what if they do lie? Or just conveniently forget to mention that massive issue they know about?
If it comes out later, after you've bought the place, that they knowingly gave false information or deliberately concealed a significant problem on that TA6 form, something that would likely have affected your decision to buy or the price you paid, then you could have grounds for legal action against them, for misrepresentation perhaps.
Okay, so it's not pure caveat emptor anymore. The TA6 provides a pretty significant layer of required disclosure.
It really does. It forces a degree of transparency and gives the buyer a crucial legal comeback if the seller hasn't been straight.
That definitely shifts the dynamic. Right, let's pivot slightly. Still on the legal side, but thinking about the people involved. Specifically, the estate agent. We need to understand who they actually work for legally. This comes under the principles of agency, right?
Exactly. This is fundamental and often misunderstood by buyers. The estate agent is legally the agent. They are acting on behalf of and taking instructions from the principal.
And the principal is?
The principal is the vendor, the person selling the property. The seller appoints the agent, usually through a written contract, and that contract defines the agent's powers, their actual authority. Their core job, legally and financially, is to act in the best interests of the seller, usually meaning getting the best possible price.
So even if they seem really helpful to me as a buyer, their legal loyalty is to the seller who's paying their commission.
Correct. They must treat buyers fairly and not mislead them.
Yeah.
There are regulations, like the Consumer Protection Regulations 2014 covering that, but their primary contractual duty is to the seller.
Okay. But what happens if, in the heat of trying to get a deal done, an agent maybe promises something or agrees to something that goes beyond what the seller actually told them they could do? Is the seller still stuck with it?
Ah, good question. Yes, there are situations where the seller, the principal, can be bound even if the agent exceeded their actual authority. There are two main concepts here. First is apparent authority, sometimes called ostensible authority.
Apparent authority. What does that mean?
This happens when the seller, through their words or actions, makes it appear to you, the buyer, that the agent has more authority than they really do. For example, if the seller says to you, oh, just sort everything out with the agent, whatever they agree is fine by me, and then the agent agrees to something outside their written instructions.
Then the seller might still be bound because they created that appearance of authority.
Precisely. Because you, the buyer, reasonably relied on the seller's representation that the agent had the power to act.
Okay, I see. And the second exception you mentioned?
The second one is ratification. This is simpler. It's when an agent does something outside their authority. Maybe they accept a lower offer than instructed because they think it's the best they'll get. But the seller, after finding out, agrees to it anyway.
So they approve the action after the fact?
Yes, they essentially adopt the agent's unauthorized act as their own. By ratifying it, the seller becomes bound by it. So in both apparent authority and ratification, the seller ends up being liable for something the agent did, even if it wasn't strictly within their original instructions.
That's really useful for a buyer to understand that the ultimate power and responsibility lies with the seller, even when you're mostly dealing with the agent. Now, thinking about the agent working for the seller, trying to get the best price, let's circle back to step one of the process we outlined, establishing the budget. You said it's vital. Why is getting the finances sorted first so critical before you even start falling in love with houses?
Because honestly, the disappointment and frustration of finding your dream home, making an offer, having it accepted, and then discovering you can't actually borrow enough money to buy it,
Yeah.
it's just awful.
Yeah, heartbreaking, and a waste of everyone's time.
Totally. Solicitors have been instructed, maybe surveys booked, It causes delays and costs for everyone involved. So the really sensible first step before you even browse Rightmove seriously is to talk to a mortgage broker or
Mhm.
directly to lenders. Get an indication and agreement in principle, perhaps.
Just to know roughly what ballpark you're playing in.
Exactly. To get a realistic idea of how much you can likely borrow based on your income, your deposit, your outgoings, your credit history.
And that budget figure, it dictates more than just the sticker price of the house, right? There are other significant costs involved.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm.
Your overall budget needs to cover not just the purchase price, but a whole load of other things. The big one is usually the deposit, typically at least 5–10% of the property value, often more.
Right.
Then you've got solicitor's fees for the legal work, the conveyancing. You'll need to pay for searches. You'll almost certainly want a survey done on the property's condition, which costs money. The lender will require a valuation, and you usually pay for that.
And the really big one, especially depending on the property price.
Stamp duty land tax, or the equivalent in Wales or Scotland.
Mm.
That can be a very significant chunk of money, and you absolutely must factor it into your budget from day one. If you forget stamp duty, your budget isn't realistic.
Okay, so budget sorted first, covering all those costs. Then you find the property, you make an offer. Now you're interacting with the agent again. We know they work for the seller. Does the type of agreement the seller has with their agent make any difference to me as a buyer? Does it affect how they might behave?
Yes, potentially it can. Understanding the agency agreement gives you a little insight into the agent's and possibly the seller's motivations and urgency. Remember, the agent usually gets paid via commission, typically a percentage of the final sale price, maybe 1% to 3.5%, although some online agents use fixed fees now.
Right, so they want the highest price possible, generally.
Generally, yes, but the type of agency agreement affects how secure that commission is for that particular agent. There are four main types.
Okay, what of it?
First, you have sole selling rights. This is the best deal for the agent. They get paid their commission if the property sells within the contract period, no matter who finds the buyer. Even if the seller finds a buyer themselves, through a friend or whatever, this agent still gets the fee.
Ah, so that agent is pretty locked in. Less incentive for them to drop the price quickly, maybe?
Could be, yes. They know they'll get paid eventually if it sells.
Yeah.
Second is sole agency. This is more common. The agent has the exclusive right to market the property, but they only get the fee if they, or another agent working through them, introduce the buyer. If the seller finds their own buyer independently, this agent gets nothing.
Okay, so a slight difference there. Gives the seller a reason to maybe try selling it themselves quietly.
Potentially. Third type, joint sole agency. This is where two agents are appointed together. They usually agree beforehand how they'll split the commission when the property sells, regardless of which one of them actually finds the buyer.
Introduces a bit of competition between the agents, perhaps?
Maybe, yes. Could mean more viewings, quicker marketing. The fourth type is multiple agency. Here, the seller appoints several different agents to market the property simultaneously.
Right.
The key difference is that only the agent who actually introduces the successful buyer gets the commission. The others get nothing.
So that sounds like it would make the agents very keen to get a deal done quickly.
Absolutely. Multiple agency usually signals a seller who is very motivated to sell, and agents who are competing fiercely. Historically, agents charge higher commission rates for multiple agency because of the risk of doing work for no pay, but competition means the fees are often similar now. For a buyer, spotting a multiple agency property might suggest the seller is keen and perhaps more open to negotiation.
That's fascinating. Just knowing the type of contract the seller has with their agent can give you, the buyer, a little bit of strategic insight.
It really can. It helps you read the situation, understand the pressures, maybe influencing the agent's advice to the seller.
Okay, let's move on to a really crucial bit of regulation. Something that's actually the seller's responsibility, but it can seriously impact the speed of the whole process for the buyer. The Energy Performance Certificate, the EPC. What is it, and why does it matter so much at the start?
Right, the EPC. It's basically a report card on how energy efficient a building is. It gives it a rating from A, which is the best, very efficient, down to G, which is the worst, very inefficient, and suggests ways to improve the rating. An EPC is valid for 10 years.
Okay, sounds useful information for a buyer, but why does it affect the start of the process?
Because of a very strict rule, an estate agent is legally not allowed to market a property for sale or for rent. Actually, unless an EPC has, at the very least, been commissioned.
Commission. So the seller has ordered it and paid for it, even if the actual certificate hasn't been produced yet.
Correct. They must have instructed an accredited energy assessor to carry out the assessment before the property appears on Rightmove, in the agent's window, anywhere.
And if they don't? If the agent just puts it up for sale anyway?
That's an offense. Trading standards can issue a fixed penalty notice. It basically means the marketing has to stop immediately until that EPC is commissioned. So if you see a property you like, but there's no EPC available or commissioned, it can cause delays right at the beginning.
Crikey. So it's a real potential bottleneck if the seller hasn't got their act together.
It can be, yes. Ensures that basic energy info is available from day one.
Are there any exceptions, any buildings that don't need an EPC?
Yes, there are a few specific exemptions. Things like temporary buildings that will be used for less than 2 years, places of worship, some industrial sites or workshops. Also, significantly, listed buildings can be exempt if the energy efficiency improvements needed to meet minimum standards would unacceptably alter their character or appearance.
Right, because you can't just slap external insulation on a Grade I listed cottage.
Exactly. The historical protection takes precedence in those specific cases.
Okay, wow. We have covered a lot of ground there. From the basic 7 steps through the weeds of contract law, agency relationships, budgeting, right up to the EPC rules. So just to try and summarize the absolute key takeaways for you, the listener. Understanding those 7 stages gives you the map. Knowing the agent works for the seller helps you navigate the relationship. Appreciating the legal weight of the TA6 form gives you confidence in disclosure. And remembering that exchange of contracts is that critical binding moment.
Absolutely. And if you look across the sources, a recurring theme is the importance of knowing when you can still walk away without penalty. We've highlighted that stage 6, the exchange, is that definitive legal line in the sand for commitment to the purchase itself.
Which brings us to our final, maybe slightly provocative thought for you to mull over. We know exchange of contracts is the legal point of no return, but think about it. How much earlier in the process do you, as a buyer, become financially committed, even if you haven't legally exchanged yet?
Yeah, when you factor in the money you've already spent, often non-refundable money, on things like the mortgage valuation fee, maybe £500 or more for a detailed survey, hundreds on legal searches, that feeling of financial commitment, the point where pulling out starts to really hurt financially, often happens much earlier. Maybe around stage 4, when you formally apply for the mortgage and start paying those upfront fees.
Right, so there's a gap between when you're financially invested and when you're legally bound. That gap, that's where all your preparation, your budgeting, your research really meets that final gut decision.
Precisely. It's the space where risk meets resolve.
Something to definitely keep in mind. Use this framework, these insights, hopefully, to help guide your own research, your own questions, your own negotiations. That wraps up this deep dive into the UK property buying process. Until next time.